Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your patience. We were just having a bit of a technical difficulty on getting Danai on, and obviously we can't have a session without Danai. So thank you, and apologies about the delay that we had majorly today, this morning. Technology always or sometimes tend to fail us, right? But yeah, here we are again. Just quickly briefing you all just before I begin. I will keep this short, but I know it's important that we go through all of this because there are questions that come in, so please bear with me and be patient. If you're in the right session, we just want to address that first. So this is an intermediate level session for the supervisors. This is an intermediate level session for the supervisor. So this is session 1. We will have session 2 in the afternoon, and we will cover SuperGoal 1, 3, 5, a young adolescents course overview. These are first semester course books. Before we proceed, I'll just check if you can hear my voice. So on the right side, there is a hand icon. You will find the hand icon just below your name. Please, can you click on the hand icon if you can hear my voice? Brilliant, excellent. So before we begin, moderators for today, just covering that myself, Nikas, Medini, and Nasir, we will be in the background to answer your questions, and we can see you've already done a lot of that in the right side. So I guess we're sorted with the Q&As. We will help you out with any questions that you have during the webinar. You already probably know Danai by now. Thank you, Danai. She's a wonderful speaker. She's a teacher trainer, a content developer, and also an author, a teacher educator. She's successfully done a lot of training workshops in the past, so we're glad that Danai is back with us doing the intermediate level this week. We covered the elementary level last week, so we will be covering the intermediate level this week. Now, before I pass on, there's just a few housekeeping which I will cover quickly. Once you're in the WebEx, you should be able to connect the audio. So you will have to connect the audio. My colleague can drop the link how you can connect the audio in the chat box. Once you connect the audio, we also recommend that you avoid using any Netflix, YouTube, or any gaming platform. This will affect your bandwidth. Very important aspect about certificates, because we're receiving these requests quite often now. You will receive the certificate of participation after we complete the webinar series. This is going to be after November 19th. You will receive it in an email, and you will be able to download this via email. So wait for that email, and then it's going to be after November 19th, I repeat. We will be taking Q&As towards the end of the session. So if you have any questions, you can drop them us in the chat box, and we will ask them towards the end to Danai. Okay, moving on quickly. There's the chat box that you know on the right side. There's a Q&A box also on the right side. They're all enabled for all of you, so you will be able to write on the chat box. Please use the Q&A box if you have any questions for Danai, or you want to cover anything as we go along. Use the chat box to engage with the presenter or any other comments. So there are two different purposes. And also, just going over the last slide from me today is you are automatically marked present for this session. So do not worry about where can I log in and how can I make myself present. You must have noticed you are muted, and also you will only see your name. So it's in the hidden list, or I think waiting list, whatever a lot of you have pointed out. But don't worry right now. There are 540 people online with you, but you can only see your name. And you cannot see the participants that are commenting. Bear with me. I just have to cover these points because then there will be a lot of questions about it, and we just want to make sure we address them. Make sure you're using the right link to get into the webinar. So the link for 10 a.m. is not going to work for 1 p.m. And I guess that's all. I am going to now pass to Danai and make sure she's got the rights and everything to begin. All right, Danai.
Okay. Thank you, Suresh. Once again, I apologize for this, but unfortunately there was no way I could do anything. Technology, as Suresh said. Okay, so we're going to be talking about intermediate. I have been advised to change things according to areas that you're most interested in. So I'll carry on, and please feel free to ask any questions. I'll try and answer as many as I can during the session, and anything that I can't answer during the session, we'll try and deal with later. Okay, so we're talking about adolescents, younger adolescents. What I'd like to focus on to begin with is transition from elementary to intermediate. I know that's an issue for many of you, and it's how different is it? Well, it is quite different, but more than that, if we focus on the learner, I think, you know, these are some of the comments and questions that learners ask to learners that are at the end of elementary and about to enter intermediate. I don't know if you agree, but if you have a look, is it going to be very different from what we know? Our teacher's going to be very strict. So we have to study harder. Do I have to be like my big brother, sister? Is everything going to be more difficult? Are my friends going to be in the same class? Now we have to be all grown up. I don't know what to expect. I'm scared, but everyone tells me it's going to be all right. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's accurate or not? Let me just say as well, I know you're all supervisors, and I am addressing your supervisors. Anything that you think is going to help you address teachers naturally, please feel free to use, or any ideas, anything at all. Yes, it's normal for them to feel that way. But come the second year, things start changing very, very fast, don't they? They start getting used to it. They start getting used to the new world. Now, when it comes to the material, when it comes to their course book, to their course, the whole appeal of the course is different. The visuals are different. It's older, isn't it? But it's addressed to teenagers. It's not too old. So one of the things that I would do is to try and stress to teachers that it's important to pave the way, make this as learner-friendly as possible and as learner-centered as possible. Now, I know that some of the teachers also don't like the idea of using a different book if they've been using another one, and so on and so forth. So some of the questions, and please, I'd appreciate some of the questions that you have got from teachers. Why do we have to use a new course book? We're used to the one we had. Now we have to prepare everything again, which is standard. Okay. One of the things, again, to stress is that we're not teaching the course book. We're teaching the language. A lot of the work that's done with any course book can be used again. Anything that has worked well in class can be reused. And it's not a bad idea to change course books because it's very difficult sometimes to remember to highlight things, to notice things. Somehow when we get used to the same course book for a very long time, we don't seem to see things. But anyway, it's not the decision that is made by teachers, so they have to adapt it. But please, I would personally stress that it's the language. A question, teachers, are goals, aims clear? Do we know which skills we have to focus on? Yes. It's very, very clear. Every single thing that you need to focus on in any lesson, any part of the lesson, is clearly set out in the teacher's book. So it is important for people to use the teacher's book. I hope there is a clear grammar section. Yes, there is a clear grammar section. I hope there isn't too much vocabulary. There's just enough vocabulary. How can we do pair work online? Right, that's a question that's being asked a lot these days, yeah? Last time when I was talking to supervisors, I don't know if any of you attended the elementary session as well. What became quite obvious is that different people, use different platforms sometimes, and we get used to different terminology. So pair work online, I would suggest what I said initially was breakout rooms. And people asked what that meant. They're like chat rooms that you can send teachers into. Sometimes 40 students. Yes, exactly. This is why you need the chat rooms, team rooms. Exactly because you have 40 students. Well, if you don't want to send them in as pairs, you can send them in as small groups, as teams of 4 maybe, and have 2 pairs to get them to practice. Usually in platforms, you get a function that allows you to listen in to the students as they're working. So you can still monitor. And they don't know when and how you're going to listen in. You don't spend too long per group, but you listen in. How can we do pair work, group work with 30 students? All the more reason to do pair work, group work with 30 students. The more students you have, the less time they have to practice if all they do is question answer from teacher to student. So time is minimal. The reason we want collaborative work is to maximize the time. How can I tell teams, groups are actually working online? By listening in. How can I use the interactive whiteboard material online? Don't students need to see me? No, actually, your students don't need to see you. They need to see what they are going to be focusing on. We're going to come back to that at different points of the presentation and in the second presentation. So more teacher requests. We need clear guidelines. Someone to show us how to use the material, access to all components, clear step-by-step teacher's notes, to know how long we can spend on different sections, to know how to prioritize aims, to know how to assess our students, set up activities and homework for the whole family online. Now you have, I hope that everybody has access to all the components. There was something about if you want access to all the teaching resources as a teacher or a supervisor, I'm not sure if that's different there. You need to register to have access to it. Clear step-by-step notes you have in the teacher's book. Please do advise teachers to use the teacher's book, even if they're not going to do exactly what it says. How long you spend on different sections will depend on your class. However, it is important that you cater for the needs and for the goals that are set for each section, and really try not to analyze every single word or translate things. I don't know how your teachers feel about translation. I know that was an issue with elementary. Is it an issue with intermediate? I'm not getting any answers. Can you please tell me? Yes, it's an issue. Okay. All right. To help students who are having difficulty. Okay. All right. But do you feel it is still an issue? Okay. Once again, there is no need. It's always an issue. Yes, of course. Yes. Okay. Some people don't agree. Okay. Sometimes an issue. Okay. It just adds to the time you need in class. You don't need to translate. First of all, when your students get to, sorry, I know again you're supervisors, depends, yes. When the students get to this level, when they get to intermediate, they will have had, it is a convention issue, yes, and it is difficult to change. But I would say it now, we are not at the time where people are using grammar translation. We are not using grammar translation. There are all sorts of different approaches that were developed over a series of years, and we're in the fortunate position of being able to choose and use techniques that work from different approaches sometimes, but we certainly don't need to translate. Translation is a totally different skill, so if you need to translate to help people understand, tell them they help people understand that minute, but they don't help them understand the language. So it really doesn't help one cater for the goals that are set. Okay. Sorry. Sorry. The last one, set up activities and homework for the whole family online. Some weak students depend on the good students to translate for them. Well, at least that's a collaborative. So it probably happens in pairs. Yes, certainly the material is not the issue. Materials are not the issue, but how they are delivered. This is exactly why I would say, please stress that teachers need to look at the teacher's guide and try to follow the steps. They say that's why we need to use translated language. No, if you use translated language, if you translate constantly, again, you help the students in the short term, but you don't help them in the long term. Translation only with passive words. Yes, if it's something that you think is well beyond the level and it's going to take like 10 hours to explain, demonstrate, and so on, fine. But what I would also say is that it's not too early to encourage students to use English to English monolingual dictionaries. Okay? Yes, I know I'm giving you the point of view of the teacher, not the supervisor, but this is the point of view that needs to be put through. How are you going to convince teachers not to translate? Okay, so you know how. You have told them, you have shown them. Okay, pictures, starting with the student. Okay, these are the course books that we're talking about this morning. If they get lost, if it's an emergency, yes, fine. All within reason. Again, if it's something that requires 10 hours, we need to know what the teachers should do, not the students. Okay, so the teacher should avoid translating as much as possible. Instead, they should try, they should try to demonstrate, they should try to use pictures where they can, use explanations in simple language, in English, okay? Cognitive processing, very, very important, okay? And what we're saying is, we're not being dogmatic about absolutely no translation. What we're saying is, avoid translating as a matter of course. Avoid translating everything in the lesson. So, components. Student book, audio program, workbook, teacher's guide, which is interleaved, test bank, interactive whiteboard, and material and active book for the student, and learning center, which is optional. So those are the main components. Okay, now the unit sections. All right, this is going to be a quick rundown of the unit sections. Listen and discuss, quick check, pair work, grammar, listening, pronunciation, conversation, your turn, about you. Use pictures, objects, or aids instead of translation, absolutely. Reading, writing, project, and finally form, meaning, and function. Okay, so these are the sections that will appear in all the units. Where you see pair work, your turn, about you, those are sections where the learners can actually use the language that they've been learning. Yes, it is suggested that they do so in pairs. Can we go back to the pair work, group work, please? Because I know some people are not convinced. Teachers are not convinced. Okay, why do we do it? We do it because we have precious little time in class. And as I know, I mentioned the same thing last week as well, but it is true. If all the interaction that the students are allowed, yes. Okay, yes, translation there are a lot of problems with translation, sorry. So if you have 40 minutes, how long do you speak? I mean, how long does the teacher speak? If the teacher feels that the teacher can't allow students to work in pairs or groups, how long does the average teacher speak, in your view? 10 is wonderful if it's just 10. 20? Yeah. Out of the 40, that's okay-ish. Okay. And what happens the rest of the time? 70? 10, 15 minutes is wonderful. 10, 15 minutes speaking time. 50, yes. Okay. 10, 15 minutes speaking time means that you do a lot of collaborative work in class. So the rest of the time the students are doing things, are actually active, and getting on with things in class. So that's good. Yes. Yes, pair work and group work. Pair work and group work will help the students communicate in class. Now, once again, we don't only teach students, tell them that they don't only teach students to get high marks, to do well on exams and so on. We are, at the end of the day, teaching students to help them to communicate in this language, which is global. It's a global medium. So we've got that aspect to consider. So unless we do collaborative work in class, then we end up spending most of the class time speaking. In other words, teacher speaking time. Yes, student speaking time has to be a lot more for the whole class than teacher speaking time. So anything that you do to make sure that happens helps, and it helps increase the time for communication and practice for the student. Okay. Any comments, questions, please? Nope. Okay. Yes, good planning minimizes teacher speaking time. Planning is very, very important. And I know there are some who start talking and don't stop. Demonstrate the concept. Oh. Okay, many points being raised here. Okay, one about online teaching, the other one about how to convince them not to translate. Show them. I can't think of a better way of doing it. In other words, take something from the material. Okay, let's do it hands-on. Okay. So in the first part of the unit where you have listen and discuss. Listen, discuss is the initial sort of presentation that you have. You expose learners to the key language of the unit, but in context. Okay, so there's always a topic. So how can you avoid translation? First of all, you can tell them they're in a museum, yeah? You can ask them to look at the picture, elicit ideas from the students. Where do they think everybody is? Possibly use photos of some museums that the students will recognize. Yes, I agree. Teacher speaking time is more than the student speaking time in reality, unfortunately. Okay, so focus on the student, begin with the students. It doesn't save time to translate. Okay, begin with the student. Show them pictures of museums. Okay, fine. Show them this. What can they see? Get them to name as many things as they see. What do they think looks different? Are they new things? Are they old things? Just quickly around the class, okay? So why do you have to then translate and say where the students are and what they're doing? Okay? And before they actually play the audio, tell them to make sure they set a listening task. So in a sense, there the distinction that we're trying to make, I'm using mother tongue, there is no perfect answer to that, the percentage of mother tongue versus second language. Okay, sorry. Trying to look at your comments as well. Okay, when we listen to language, when we're talking about input, yeah. When we listen to language, when students listen to language, when anybody listens, okay. In this context, in the context of the language class, they listen for what reason? Just for language or for understanding? So can we combine? Yes, we can. But I think it's important to make that distinction. In other words, when you get the students to look at the context, look at the picture, name things, establish the context of the museum, establish the fact that these students are in the museum looking at things, okay, then what? Do you go into, you get them to listen and then you deal with it as a language point? Probably not. Tell them to use a question that will require students with the first listening to pay attention to the meaning. Then start focusing on the language. This is the purpose of this section anyway. Okay? Vocabulary. It's all illustrated. So do you feel that, you have to translate? Should the teachers feel that they need to translate? Yes. If the students translate to confirm, so they see lamp and they say lamp and keychains and they translate it into Arabic, that's different. They just want to confirm that they've got it, or it gives them a sense of achievement that they got it, that they understand what they're saying. So basically, it's all there. Okay, there are visuals. There is help. There is support to try and restrict the need for the use of translations throughout. No, translation should not be a habit. Okay. Have you got the first handout? Suresh?
Hi. Yes, I've dropped the link to the handout in the chat box, so you should be able to download the handout. I've dropped the link several times, so you just have to click on the link and download the handout that Danai is going to refer to. Yes. Amazing. Excellent. Just dropping it again in case you've missed. This is the link. Just download it. There are 2 handouts that are in this link. Thank you.
Okay, the handout is about teaching adolescents how. Okay, can we go back to the lesson in a minute? Okay, it's about teaching adolescents different factors. You might have seen another version of it. Please feel free to use some of it, all of it, none of it with your students, with your teachers, sorry. It helps, but it also helps to discuss the issue of stereotyping and whether we should stereotype or not. Exactly. When new words are associated with pictures, there's no need to translate. How can you practice then? Well, use pictures, objects, without the words, okay? That will require possibly downloading some photos, okay, but it's not that difficult these days. And since people are going to be working online, it really makes life a lot easier, okay, because you don't have to mount the pictures, the photos, the images that you find on card or different paper and so on. About using it when teachers are explaining lessons. What do you mean by explaining lessons? Sorry, I lost that. That was a very long comment. They use Arabic when explaining lessons, like here when they explain that these students are at the museum looking at things, and the man is welcoming them, about to guide them. Okay. So that about adolescence, okay? Because we started with that. I'm not going to spend time on the handout then. I just wanted to point out that you have it, you can use it as you see fit or not use it. When they're teaching in general, okay, fine. Now, we're dealing with language. Okay, that's okay. And once again, if the students give you the translation, they would just want to confirm that they understand. That's fine, provided it doesn't become a sort of activity whereby they think they have to translate everything. But it's perfectly natural for the students to translate into Arabic to confirm. Specific words and especially abstract words, yes, and particularly in a sort of a first year, second year, this might happen quite a lot, where you have to do that with abstract or words. Again, what we said earlier, when you're in a position where, as a teacher, where you have to spend hours trying to explain something in the target language, in English, in order for the students to understand, obviously you will have to resort to translation. If you don't, however, yes, it's their job to look up the meaning in Arabic. There was an earlier comment which I think was important. Sometimes word-by-word translation doesn't work, and you know that, and it can cause great misunderstanding. Also, we get a lot of sort of funny things in English because of word-by-word translation. Added to that, tell the teachers that if their students have to speak, have to introduce themselves, something very simple, okay, find themselves with other people their age, with other teenagers, okay, in a more global setting, either because they've gone into a summer school or they're meeting some friends somewhere and there are some English-speaking kids and so on. What will they do? Will they think of what they want to say in Arabic, formulate it and translate it into English? It doesn't work that way. If people had to do that all the time, it would take ages to exchange any bit of information. So that's another practical explanation of why we can't do it. Okay, explaining in general, when they can get students to think and identify how things work, they don't have to explain. So in other words, tell them to try and help the learners notice things in the language, including in grammar in context, remember things. Now, this is right at the beginning, yeah? You've got this, that, these, those, and so on. Yes, it's not, they don't have to look for the Arabic. Okay, there seems to be some disagreement that some people feel that teachers should be prepared to provide the Arabic, and other people feel that the students should look things up to find their equivalent in Arabic. I don't think bilingual lists work. First of all, bilingual lists are memorized and then forgotten, and may be memorized for the exam and then forgotten. Bilingual lists, okay, don't tell you how to use the word, where to use it, doesn't show you what kind of words come before or after it, okay, how it's used in context, how it's used in the middle of another text. Yes, it's best to memorize chunks of language, absolutely. It's best, so what's this? Instead of what is this? Okay? They know, yes, you point out, you show them, they know it's a contracted form, but it's what's this? There's no reason to break it down. And the same thing happens with more advanced language later on. Okay, so no, in terms of vocabulary, I'm sorry, it's just show them. Yeah, okay, fine, show them or tell them to look. Look, if you can see this right under the table, the grammar table, which summarizes the forms, the grammar that you want to focus on. Sorry, yes, I know you're supervisors. I'm sorry, but we are talking about, I am talking about teachers. Okay, underneath in A, tell them to look at the pictures carefully. The teachers, in other words. Okay, the problem is that our teachers teach for the test and do not help the students acquire the language. Yes, I agree with you. That is definitely a problem. Well, that's the first thing to convince them about as much as possible. If all you need to do is get the students to pass a test, then yes, there's absolutely no need for the students to communicate, no need to do anything at all. And then what happens? Then what happens when they get teachers focus on tests, only tests? Unfortunately, that doesn't really give us the true picture, does it? Tell them it doesn't. We're talking about ongoing assessment here. It's important. The most important thing for a teacher is to observe and to listen. That's something that teachers often forget. Teachers are not there to lecture, to show the students how much they know. That's given. They're there to help the students learn. Okay, the use of, that's a separate answer, the use of the very last section, now that you brought it up, this one, form, meaning, function, is to make sure that some of the things that appear in the test also appear in the book, and to help the learners remember them. So that has been catered for as well. But what we want to try and do is also develop the rest of the skills. They might be lazy. Who might be lazy? I don't understand that. Teachers. Okay. No, I wouldn't like to say that teachers are lazy. I have worked with teachers in Saudi. I'd rather not think that. But yes, I know what you're talking about. And the main problem is lack of planning a lot of the time. Okay. So one of the things that I would stress with teachers, yes, the ones who focus on tests, yes. Okay. Yes, it's easy to constantly sort of lecture, to explain, and then to expect the students to learn on their own, when in fact, that's what they should be doing while we teach them or while we help them learn, whether in class or online. Okay. Now, as you can see, everything is clear. There are activities for students to practice. What I was trying to show you before, or to ask you to maybe point out to teachers, is the fact that under the table, the grammar table, if you look at the illustrations, they demonstrate the difference in meaning between this and that, right? Or these and those. When things are closer, when things are further out. Yes, they worry about you don't waste time though. They don't waste time if they set up activities and get the students to practice, to speak, to communicate, to do things in class. That's another issue. I'm sorry, it's almost impossible to cover everything because I know, I understand, I know the problem, but we are actually dealing with the whole issue of training and methodology, practically everything in it, okay? And you want me to show you things and then you tell me that, okay, that's for teachers, not for supervisors. Unless you demonstrate yourselves how you want them to do things, they're not going to do them. Those who don't want to do them, in other words. So basically, to go back to explaining and lecturing, even for the test, okay. How far does that get the student? Can the students actually do the test? Aren't the students interested in learning the language? Aren't the parents interested in having their children learn the language? We should conclude the curriculum rather than teaching the students the language. Yes, that's universal. Okay, that's universal. Under pressure, any teacher will worry about that. But how? You can cater for the curriculum in different ways. Catering for it through lecturing, as I've been doing, unfortunately, is not going to do it. Okay? Why are we doing it this way together? Because there's quite a lot to talk about, and because I'm making a whole load of assumptions about the fact that you have seen the material, you know the problems that you're having, you know what sort of attitudes are prevalent. So it's important to do it this way. But in terms of learning, if you just explain to students, how long is that going to take? And how long would it take to set up this activity, work with a partner, ask and answer? Okay? How long would the activity take? 3 minutes? 3 to 5 minutes? In the worst of cases. But you have to set up very carefully. Yes, 5 minutes. But it needs to be set up very carefully. That's another issue that is going to be covered in the teachers' sessions as well. Things like setting up activities. And also it's going to crop up in the session later today. Okay? Set up carefully, demonstrate, have a couple of students demonstrate, then let everybody work in pairs. If you're in class, move around and monitor. If you're working online, listen in. It doesn't take longer. It's just a different way of working. It's the difference between learning about the language and learning the language. Now, one of the things that came up last time was that teachers feel pressured by parents, especially nowadays when they're working online. They feel pressured by parents who want them to translate. Ask them if it's the parents that want to translate. Is it the parents who don't know and want to help the children? Or do they insist on translation because they think that's the best way to teach, to learn this, if one is a student? What I have had to do sometimes in seminars, meetings with parents is, unfortunately, to sort of gently try and get them to think about this along the lines of, okay, so you did grammar and you did translation and you learned rule and you want your child to do the same thing? And they say, yes, okay. All right. How confident do you feel about your English? usually those people can't use the language. I don't expect an answer. I want to make the point that that way of working, of supposedly teaching, doesn't really get us the learning outcomes that we want to get. Unless you insist on the teachers also catering for language acquisition, I'm not sure what else you can do. But the thing is, get them to focus on the students. This is why I think maybe you might want to have a look at the handout and see if you would like to change things or do something along those lines. Focus on the students. If they say they have trouble with the students, they have trouble with the students if the students are not involved, if they're not active in class. Then they have trouble, yes, because it's very hard for people to sit back and do something, but also do nothing. But also get them to think about, or even ask the students, have a little questionnaire about what they like to do in their free time and so on. Not quickly in class, make a note about each student, okay? They'll find that a lot of their students are online doing things all the time. And some of the things that they're doing online, they do in English. And quite a few of the students in Saudi Arabia also participate in games, interactive games online. I'm not going to discuss whether that's good or bad or indifferent. Yes, give the students the chance to use the language. But what I'm trying to say is some of them already use the language, and some of them also have developed remarkable skills and are very autonomous learners and work out things for themselves and have picked up a lot of language that they use when they chat with the people that they play with, or when they simply chat with people from different places. So basically, when we insist on translating all the time, we seem to go against reality here. Again, get the students to think about this as a global medium. It is a global medium. If the students have been exposed to it, I know not everybody is exposed, but a lot of them are exposed to the language beyond the classroom, okay? If they are, then what exactly do they get out of somebody lecturing them for nearly an hour? Yes, it's easier to do. You don't have to bother thinking about how you're going to present things, what pictures you're going to use, how you're going to organize your lesson, how long you're going to spend on every single thing. This would be my answer to the time issue. Again, this is an issue that crops up in our session later today. Okay, if you don't know, if you can't figure out how long things are going to take, what can you do? And that is not always easy, okay? You need to be clear about what you're doing. You need to, again, I know your supervisors. I'm talking about the teachers. They need to know, the teachers need to know their students, know how much they can do, know who's got some difficulties, who hasn't, not because they should be put on the spot, but so they can gauge the time that is required for the different activities. So in other words, what I tend to tell sort of trainee teachers is the most valuable thing to do before you plan is to, or as you plan, is to visualize your lesson, be it on in class or online. Okay. One of the things that you'll also find in this series is that there is humor. Yeah. Some of the things are a bit funny. There are groups of students who take that and make it even better or not. Okay. Reading, yes, there is reading, and the reading right from the start is based. Yes, thank you very much. It's okay to speak to your teachers because you are. I think we're all teachers, yeah. Okay, and we all understand. We understand the pressures. It's just that under pressure and under any circumstances at all, we try to do the best we can to help people learn. Okay, and that's something to stay. Whereas if you teach for tests, it's not long term. It's short term. Nothing is going to stay. So all that time is wasted. It doesn't work that way. Okay. So even early on, there's attention to different genres, different types of text. It's not just text to read and learn words and understand. There is a purpose to reading. So there is skills development, there is receptive skills development and productive skills development. Not everything needs to be analyzed and memorized. I think that would be the one thing that I would stress. Writing starts gradually, okay? Very short text, sentence level, and what you get are the writing corner notes, which are very useful, and the students can go back to them and check things as they work. There is a model, so the teacher's job is to help the students to highlight features of the model for the students to be able to follow. In writing as well, we can do collaborative work. I know people who work online do collaborative work on writing through all kinds of functions, including Google Docs and so on. So different groups collaborate to do their own writing together. That saves time. It doesn't waste time. It's a way to save time, collaborative learning. Okay, you have a second handout, I believe, on online learning. Yes? Yes.
It's in the same link that I shared earlier. So the same link is going to have both the handouts. Handout 1 and handout 2. I'll just share the link again in case you've missed it.
Okay. I just moved on to 3. Yes, you've got both of them. Okay. Is this an issue? I'm assuming it's an issue. Everyone said it was an issue, teaching and learning face-to-face and online. Okay. These are comments that people have made. You might have better ones, your own. Again, if you feel, it's useful to use these with your teachers, please go ahead or change them, whatever you think is best. yes, unfortunately, time is up. But there are people who don't think that it's possible for students to learn remotely. I hope you don't all feel that way. But again, like practice in the classroom, like what you do in the classroom, it makes a difference. Okay, whether you use appropriate material, whether you show what you show on your screen is appropriate. Since there are people who are worried about the time, I'm going to skip the comments and move on to how you need to tell the students, the teachers to think when they're getting ready to work online. Okay, one of the things to try and come to terms with is that the screen is not a space where we can stick the classroom. The screen is going to be in front of the students. So the first thing to think about is what they want the students to focus. So for example, if you're starting this lesson and you want the students to focus on this picture, and do you want students to focus on this picture? Yes, I will try to wrap up. You will need them to see this on their screen. You don't need them to see the teacher, you, if you're the teacher, to see the teacher on the screen pointing to the board or holding a book. In other words, we can't stick the classroom into the computer. It's a different space. We need to think about what we want the students to see, what we want them to do, what we want to focus on. We want them to focus on, and this is what we show on the screen. If it's a simple exercise, we show the simple exercise on the screen. We don't have to show ourselves on the screen. I think that's a good rule to try and follow. And one of the things to, there are activities in the Learning Center, okay, which is optional. There are online activities that you can use. And remember, you can use interactive whiteboard material online as well. They need to look and hear at the same time. But what I'm trying to say is they don't have to see you. I mean, if you're the teacher, they don't have to see the teacher at all times. Okay, they can hear the teacher. Okay, I understand that some of you have to leave. There's a problem with time. So all I can say at this point is that we'll be looking at more, yes, they need to see the lesson. Okay. All I can say at this point is that we're going to be revisiting some of the points. I'm sorry we couldn't cover everything. We are talking about the whole of methodology here, aren't we? So it can't be done within an hour. Yes. Yes, we're going to discuss questions and answers. Yes, good. Okay, yes. Female teachers don't show them. Well, I saw some, okay. I have seen some of the videos that were made, and I saw quite a few teachers there. Anyway, there are people who want to leave. Thank you very much. I'm sorry about the delay when we started early this morning. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you, everyone. We understand you'll need to leave right now, and that's all right. We will just stay back and cover Q&A session now. if that's all right. So our apologies, we started late, and we understand you have to get back, so it's totally okay. Feel free to log off now. We will now cover the Q&A, if that's all right.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you, Danai. So moving on to the lovely questions that we have received from you all. Just going to, yep, right there. So thank you so much for your questions. They have been brilliant. We've received some great questions from the audience and just shows the level of engagement that we have today. So we're just going to answer a few of them so we can just go through them. And the first one I have here is, what is the framework for a lesson in SuperGoal?
The framework?
Framework for the lesson in SuperGoal.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, me too.
That can be lesson model or lesson structure.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Nasir. Look in the teacher's book. It will give you the goals of each lesson and how you can go through the activities, how you can organize them, what you need to work through them. The framework of the lesson is not always the same, exactly the same, but there are some principles that are carried through. Like, for example, always starting with the students trying to elicit things from the students, what they know about what they can see. Okay, so there's always a way to begin to set the context, introduce the topic, unless it's one of the sections where they need to communicate in pairs or groups, and in which case then those instructions are given.
Thanks, Danai. In general, how can teachers do active online learning?
Active online learning with students, okay, has to be, first of all, on platform synchronous. And for me, the most important function that you need is what we're talking about, chat rooms, in other words, breakout rooms, whatever your platform calls them, where you can organize students in pairs or teams, groups, to work together. I think that's a must for people to work together. If you want interactivity sort of between learner and screen, then obviously we're talking about something else. Possibly the interactive whiteboard material should help you.
Yes, the interactive whiteboard, of course. You've covered this before, I know, but please, if you can cover this again for our audience tonight, is what is your opinion about using Arabic language when teachers are explaining lessons? We have some teachers who complain that students don't understand when they are explaining it in English.
The thing is, okay, explaining goes a long way. We need to know what is being explained, because what is being explained maybe shouldn't be explained. Maybe students should be asked to look at what they've got in front of them and try and work out, for example, when they can use a form, when, for example, they can use present progressive. You have a lesson there, for example. Which I think is pretty clear, yeah? This is the scene where a film is being made, yeah? This is the set.
Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you do that again, please? Sorry. Yep.
Okay. So basically, instead of explaining, what can you do? You can say, okay, fine, so this is what's happening, so this is the scene. This is supposedly you have asked the students to look at this picture. You elicited ideas, okay, about all kinds of things that they can see. All right, so look at the examples. Why are you feeling this way? What are you doing? Okay, he's breaking the window. Okay, when can you see him breaking the window? Demonstrate in class. Okay, I'm talking now. I'm talking to you. When? Now, right now. Okay. So this is just trying to give you a very quick answer. We're talking about concept checking here. In other words, the meaning of the grammar. This is what the students need to work out. This is what they need to understand in order to use the language. There was a long comment that I missed just now.
I think a lot of people are giving suggestions about the Arabic language that they can use the dictionary. They can explain it like they're just telling us how they have probably dealt with it. So thank you for sharing your experience. It's up to the teacher herself as long as she planned it well. I can read this out so you would know what these are. Actually, these teachers, they will have to call it the student understanding. Teachers can use dictionary as a group to tell the meaning to the class.
Yeah.
And I guess that's all.
The thing is, a dictionary, is it a bilingual, or is it an English to English dictionary?
Mm.
You see, the reason we don't want to isolate words to that extent, and we want to go for chunks, is to help learners see how they can use the words, with which other words, for example, they can use them. Otherwise, it's not very clear, okay? So if you have, I'm trying to see. No need for model lesson as long as it's planned well. Yes, of course. Okay. Sorry. This is not the perfect example, but if you see museum gift shop, okay, you get 3 words there, yeah? Do you translate, again, it's not an ideal example, but bear with me for a minute. Okay. Buy a souvenir at the museum gift shop. Okay. So, you also have buy a souvenir at the museum gift shop. Okay. Which words do you think the learners would be familiar with here? None of them? All of them? How helpful is it to learn museum separately, gift separately, shop separately? Do they need to learn, okay, museum. Do they need to learn the word souvenir? Have they seen it? They've probably seen it. But if they learn souvenir on its own, as a separate word, how useful is it? Where do you buy a souvenir, however? Buy a souvenir is more useful to notice. What I'm trying to say is that if you don't translate, you encourage students to use monolingual dictionaries, learner dictionaries that are monolingual. They'll be able to get a lot more than just single words. They'll be able to see which other words they can use them with, or if they have to use an article with it or not. And what preposition? Okay, this is how people pick up prepositions. Buy a souvenir at the museum gift shop. So this is why we try to encourage using the target language. Sorry.
Thank you, Dana. No, I'm glad you went into the detail. That was really good to know and watch for everyone. You've answered this again, but we have this a couple of times, so I'm just going to go over it again. What is the use of the section form, meaning, and function? The teacher's book say it's a revision, but it's not because it has new information?
It's a revision from possibly other level. It could be from another level. It could be from another point in the book. So a revision does not need to happen within one semester, surely. But if we're talking about the language, and this I think everybody will agree on, I mean the teachers should agree on, is we're trying to cater for different levels of learning, right? So they don't start beginners and end as beginners. If that's what happened, if that was the case, then we would have a serious problem. Things are recycled, so it's important to recycle. And as I said, very honestly in the beginning, is that section makes sure, reminds you of all the possible points, bits and pieces that you might come across in your official exams, in your official tests.
Thanks, Danai.
Google Translate, oh gosh. Okay, I need to answer two things. Okay, yes, I know, of course they can do that. They can use their mobiles and tablets and so on. They can use Google to translate. But again, there are problems with those translations, aren't they? They are word by word. They're sometimes totally inappropriate for the context. The syntax is all over the place. They're really not reliable, okay? And I don't know. No, it's not good at translating. No. Okay, two more things that were mentioned. Somebody mentioned presenting words in a story. Yes, when you can do that, it's very nice because the story also acts as a mnemonic. It helps them remember. Yes, Monsieur, I disagree with using Google Translation. So we don't use it. Quite honestly, it's not reliable. The other question was which approach, which teaching approach? No single teaching approach, right? We are fortunate enough at the moment to be using whatever works, whatever involves learners, engages learners, helps them learn, and we use techniques from a number of different approaches. Yes, the communicative approach, inquiry-based approaches, and a lot of other approaches from the past, but not grammar translation per se. Yes, all that goes in. Okay, so it is more of an eclectic attitude. So we're not, fortunately, at a time where we're being dogmatic. We are using different approaches. What we're interested in is to get the learners to think, use what they know. We address them as people who know things. They haven't got blank minds. They know things, okay? And we try to activate what they know, and we try to get them to notice things, become aware of things, learn, and hopefully eventually be able to learn on their own. So there's a long way to go. I hope that answers that question.
Thank you, Danai.
No, one fits all is not the approach of courses. Audiolingual or cognitive approach, no, neither, both. All. I'm talking about selecting things like, for example, if you're going to do drills, you are using audiolingual, aren't you? if you follow certain stages in dialogues, then you might be using direct approach, and so on and so forth. So whatever works, provided it helps people learn and helps us work in a collaborative manner.
Thanks, Nai, and thank you everyone for your lovely questions. And we hope, I know we've not answered all of them, but we have a record of them, so we'll get back to you about them. But I'll just cover 2 more if that's okay, quickly, because I know we have another session that needs to start. Can you talk about the project activity in the module, please?
Okay, the project activity is the chance that the opportunity that the learners have to do some work on their own. Actually, collaborative work in pairs or groups is more realistic, I think, than asking students to work on their own. Oh. I know in SuperGoal you're not given much in the instructions for the project. You're given the idea. There's more in the teacher's guide, but basically it's a culmination of everything that you've done in the unit, and quite often the topic of the unit is being used in the project. And in this case, they have to, with classmates, so in groups, they have to write a script, okay, for a short how-to video. Okay, this can be organized again as an inquiry-based and as a project-based, inquiry-based activity. Ask them to look for things on the web if they want more help. They will find little videos, okay? Discuss exactly how they're going to do it, and write the scripts being exactly what people are going to say. The actual video that they're writing the script for could be a sort of a 1 minute, 2 minutes video. It doesn't have to be anything very long, particularly at this level, yeah? But more details you will find in the teacher's guide.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks, Sanai. And the last one for today is, how do you suggest to teach grammar lessons in which more than half of the page is merely grammar explanation? What is the best way to teach this?
We teach grammar in context. This is a big issue. We're not going to cover it completely, but let me say this, but the first part of each unit basically is the language, grammar in context. So this is where you begin. You present the particular language, which you want to look at it as grammar. Yes, fine, your grammar, vocabulary, in a context. That is because it also gives you the possibility of dealing with the meaning of the grammar form, the concept, in other words, checking it and helping the learners see when this particular form can be used, okay? It's then that you isolate and focus on the specific item formally. Yes. Okay. Do you want to reverse the order? It's up to you, but I would opt personally for presenting in context and getting the students to notice, reflect, identify when to use it or think about it at least, so they know how to use it, so that they don't only learn the form, but they learn when to use it. I hope that answers it. Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. Lost you for a minute.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Any more?
I guess we've covered all for today. But yeah, we are aware that you need to go. That's fine. A couple of you are asking about the second session today for supervisors. So yes, it is at 1 p.m. It's the same time. I've dropped this session. You'll have to register. So I've just dropped the link that you can register. This is for Intermediate Supervisor, Session 2, so you can just register there. Thank you so much for your patience, and thank you for joining us today. We covered a session this morning about how to register. Feel free to leave now, but I'm just going to stay back and cover how you can do registrations. So we did it this morning at 9 a.m. KSA time. I think about a lot of teachers joined and supervisors joined to know how you can actually register your session and receive the links, because there has been a few issues with the login links and everything. We will be sharing the recording with your administrator, but if you want to know this now, I'll just do a quick walkthrough about it. For those of you who've already registered and received the confirmation link, you don't have to stay back for this session. This is optional. Feel free to sign off now, and we'll see you at 1 p.m. today then. But if you're still struggling with the registration link, you have an issue there, something's not working out for you, then please stay on. I will just walk you through how you can do that now.